Hello, Antoinette Lattouf with the Weekend Briefing. My guest today is difficult to introduce because he's such a bloody overachiever. He's done everything. Singer, songwriter, pianist, composer, poet, speaker, and also, 3 honorary doctorates, because why not? I am speaking of Tim Minchin. He has a new book. It's his first nonfiction book called You Don't Have to Have a Dream, Advice for the Incrementally Ambitious. We have so much to unpack. This book, the meaning of life, and everything in between, because why not? Tim, welcome to the Weekend Briefing. I did notice your Instagram bio because it says singer, songwriter,
God, I'm gonna
pianist,
come across as
writer.
very pretentious from the
Well, there's a
outset.
lot of slashes, but there's
Yeah.
an interesting slash in this one.
Okay, sorry.
Writer, comedian, producer, speaker, poet, wanker, fair, reader, runner, warrior. What do you worry about?
I guess I'm worried about some of the things that come up in this book. Actually, I'm worried, and I know it's untrendy for people, or at least it's treated with contempt when people like me say this. But I'm very, very worried that the way we speak to each other in the world is counterproductive to progress. So those are the things I worry about, which is why I'm no longer on. I don't look at Instagram and stuff, is because I was spending so much time feeling distressed by even people I respect, just kind of um, saying stuff all the time that my logic nerd kind of critical thinking background is just like, oh, that's going to make things worse. And so yeah, I guess that's one of the things I worry about. I worry about my kids. I worry about the climate change. I worry about
Yeah.
nuclear proliferation, and I worry about AI, and I worry about the fact that we need a world government to help us with those things, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah, there's some pretty
There you go.
decent things to worry
Thanks.
about.
Yeah.
One thing you didn't do, because you have a very impressive Instagram bio, you have excellent teeth. Did you ever consider putting that? Excellent teeth, ever?
They're quite new. They're my fake teeth.
Oh, is that what they are?
You've got perfect teeth too. That can't be real.
They are real. My teeth are.
Don't believe a word of it.
They are real. Okay, I had braces. I've had braces twice.
Okay, twice
and
braces.
Invisalign.
Yeah, okay.
Look at
3.
these are all
They're
real.
beautiful, but no veneers. Yeah, I capped them all about 2 years ago, and it made it so obvious to me. I think I look like a weird newsreader now, but apparently most people didn't notice at all.
Well, I'm glad we sorted that one.
Yeah,
that was one
good.
of the most pressing things I
love
wanted
it. That's
to cover.
a compliment on aesthetics, which of all the things people come to me with, it's not often compliments on aesthetics. Not often. You're really handsome.
Oh, well,
You've got great teeth, so I'll take teeth.
Excellent.
Thanks, even though they're fake.
I will give you another compliment. And I suspect you've had a few about this, Matilda and the music. I listen to it on repeat in my household. Yes, I have 2 girls who love musicals.
You have an excuse.
I have an excuse,
Yeah.
but I listen to it in the car when they're not with me. And Revolting Children, I'm going to say, that's the best song on the. Do you call it a soundtrack? It's a soundtrack.
Yeah, on the movie soundtrack.
Yeah, the movie soundtrack.
Yeah, I agree. The version of Revolting Children on the movie soundtrack elevates it beyond, and that's Chris Nightingale's orchestrations and stuff. But I'll tell you a hot secret. I'm just recording lots of stuff at the moment. I think I'm going to put out an album. I think I'm going to call it Attic Songs, which is basically like going back over the last 30 years and going, what haven't I recorded and released? And I'll just chuck it out.
Yeah.
But I recorded with my band a version of Revolting Children because I'm so inspired by that arrangement of it. I'm going to do like a sort of dirty punk version of it and try and release it. And I've done it exactly the same beats per minute as that version, so I want to match my performance of it up to that video.
Do you need a dancer or a backup
Yeah,
dancer or
well,
anything in that? I'm
I
not
need
very
one-
good, but I have very good teeth. I
need
can just
one-
smile and try and dance.
Yeah, I'm glad you like that song, and I'm glad you listened to it. I just think that movie was so cool.
I just love it, and because I just think children can be really revolting, and I don't believe that was the premise of that song. That was more a celebration of revolting children. But when my children are being revolting, I just really enjoy that song.
Yeah.
As an insult to my children.
The pun sort of got lost in history, but it's such a fun pun, like the peasants are revolting. And it's a very Roald Dahl pun because I was so sort of marinated in Roald Dahl when I was little, and he has a book of poems called Revolting Rhymes. So throughout Matilda, there's all these little tips of the hat to Roald's other work. And so the word revolting is such a Dahlian word, and the way that children can be both heroes and little brats
Yeah.
In fact, their heroism is their bratness. It's their messy sort of immaturity that helps them rise up against these despotic, controlling adults.
Do you remember surely you can't remember all the lyrics of all the songs you've written?
No, I don't. Some songs I've forgotten. Someone requested a song on my last tour, and I went, I didn't write that song, and then I realized I had,
Yeah,
and I was like, I
right.
don't remember a song called that, and then I went through. I had to Google it. But I mean, Matilda's been such a huge part of my life, and it's never a negative part. Like,
Mm.
maybe 5 times a week I get a text from some friend of a friend saying my kid's doing Matilda at their primary school in
Yeah.
South Africa or Chile, or and can you please send a video to say good luck? And I hope I mostly get to them all.
Do you know people charge for those things?
Yeah, Cameo come after me all the
Yeah,
time.
I can't imagine charging for that. I mean, but I'm not a very business-minded person. But I've been asked a lot to do birthday messages and stuff.
Mm.
They're like, "Can you send me a 30-second message?" And then I go and send 5 minutes. I go and research who the person
Yeah.
is, and I'm like, "Yeah, for your Aunt Betty, I'll do
Yeah.
something for her
Well, it's good to
60th."
know. I'm coming after you next time I have a birthday. But
Are you
I
looking for a freebie?
yeah, I want a freebie. The Cameo thing is the only way I would do it is if I could leverage it for charity. But I don't even think that's the best way for me to do charity stuff. But if I just went, look, I'll do you a 5-minute little song.
I mean,
I'll do you a little song for 5 minutes, and it's $10,000, and then it would just be rich people, and all that money can go to children's arts charity.
oh
I could
yeah, that's
imagine
a nice
that.
way to do that.
I've thought about it. I might get there, but it does take away your creative juices when you're doing stuff for individuals. I'd rather make stuff that everyone can consume.
Oh no, I was just like more the happy
Yeah,
birthday.
I know.
Hi, I hear you love blah blah blah.
Yeah,
Wishing you a
yeah.
happy birthday.
But
Anyway,
I can't do all of them. So
No, you
yeah,
can't.
I don't know. Yeah,
Look,
we're very lucky.
let's talk. Let's collaborate. I feel like there's an opportunity.
Yeah,
You have a smiling
our own
dancer.
cameo.
We do a cameo.
Yeah.
I think we've got something. You've previously written songs, Come Home, which is about Cardinal Pell, and I Still Call Australia Homophobic. What would your anthem now be for the country or the state of human rights in the world if you were to have another anthem?
I wrote it.
Oh.
I wrote it, and it just won the biggest advertising prize on the planet. It's called Play It Safe, and I wrote it for the Sydney Opera House, and that's my anthem for now. And so the Sydney Opera House turned 50, and they asked me to write a song, and I wrote a song and performed it, and it was directed by Australia's most successful advertising director, Kim Gehrig, she's won Emmys and blah blah, and she's just won a Cannes Lion, and it's called Play It Safe, and it's an ironic song. I mean, it's been watched 1 billion times in the world or something. It's just that Australians everyone watched it, but it was the week. It got released in the week of. I'm not sure if I got my timeline right, of the no vote, and then October 7. So it was like, but the amazing thing,
Well, what's the message?
it's to get out of your tribe,
Yeah, right.
get out of your bubble. But it's all satire. So it goes, you got to stick to your convictions. You got to nail down your views. You got to steer clear of that discomfort you feel when you're walking in another person's shoes. You got to work out who your team is and wear the flag with pride. Find a box that makes you comfortable and then stay the heck inside.
Yeah.
So it's that. And it's not my first song appealing for people to extend their empathy, but beyond their own group. I've written The Fence, which is 15 years old, which is called In Defense of the Fence, which sounds a bit like a song about apathy, but it's a song about complexity. And I've got a song called 15 Minutes of Shame, which is about how we shame people and eventually they'll come for you too. So
you've written all the anthems.
I've written a lot of songs,
Yeah.
but I think I'm very, very proud of Play It Safe, and it's an interesting Rorschach test because people, progressives like me, they see it as upbraiding the conservative right, which the song does.
But it's also about them very much.
But it's very much about. I mean, I don't think you have to draw equivalence between the effect of the reactionary alt conservative right and the kind of super one-minded public shaming kind of what we unfortunately call woke, far left. You don't have to draw equivalence to understand that they are being affected by the same thing, which is epistemic bubbles caused by social media.
Yes, my only pushback to that is one has more power than others. So some might be,
Totally.
angry and mobilize online and in your Twitter comments. Another has institutional power to suppress, to expel.
There's people with institutional power on both sides of that, definitely. I mean, the most of the extreme angry right are not powerful. They're poor and ill-educated and.
Oh, you're talking sort of alt-right.
Well, I'm just talking about the
Yeah.
extremes of people who, once they decide what team they're on, they don't consider. I mean, our job is to expand our. I believe our job is to push as hard as we can to expand our empathy out to as many different people as possible, which is different from letting the world ruin your life by always feeling devastated by the suffering of everybody in the world. We can't do that either. But to the extent that we want the world to be a peaceful place, we do need, I don't know, like coal miners who have lost their job and hate greenies to think about what it might be like to be I don't know, young black kid incarcerated, blah blah.
Yeah.
And we need educated, Asian, Australian, lefty somethings to really think about what it would be like to be a not particularly educated, disempowered white bloke right now. It has to go all ways or no ways.
There's a growing conversation, and it's one that can be easily shut down, but I think it's one that's important to have, about one vulnerable group of people that we don't spend a lot of time talking about. There's not a lot of policies. There's certainly not a lot of money necessarily thrown that way, and that is poorly educated, disenfranchised, working class young white men. Do you worry that because...
I can't tell whether you're being ironic.
No, I'm not.
Do you really think that is a group we should think about?
Yes, because they're the group that are being radicalised. They're the group that are most likely to turn to violence. I mean, not in the same way as we know historically marginalised groups are not only overlooked but deliberately punished by successive governments and policies, whether they're First Nations people or ignored and overlooked or minimised, people with disability.
I don't know if I'd say deliberately punished. I think mostly history is riddled with good intentions, poorly executed.
You reckon?
Yeah.
I think that's very generous. But we can...
You just talk go talk to who I was listening, because I try to listen as widely as possible, because I try to put my money where my mouth is in this. I try to always challenge my assumptions. It's really hard work when you are sure about something.
Well, let's get back to our disenfranchised young white men.
Yes.
I don't lose sleep over it. I'm going to say that. But I do wonder if by not engaging that group of people, we're just sowing the seeds for more damage for them and the damage that they can inflict on society.
It's a beautiful example. And I love that you're saying this unironically, because my respect for you, which I walked in here with my respect for you very high, but it just went up another bar, because it's hard to seriously look at that group because of history. But history, you can't blame contemporary, just like you can't blame a, young black kid who grew up in the hood in a drug dealing family who stabbed someone and ended up on death row. We understand that wasn't his fault. You can't blame people for the history of the patriarchy. You simply, humans don't easily carry the weight of history on their own shoulders. You can't yell at a man that they are to be blamed for history's white supremacy or patriarchy. It just doesn't feel natural. It's like gaslighting them, saying, take the sins of your father on your shoulders. You're like, no, they're fucking not. I'm just trying to do my job, mate.
Yeah.
So it is a perfect example of counterproductive behavior to scream at people that they are privileged when they don't feel privileged.
Yes.
Even if they're wrong. Even if they are privileged and they don't understand it, screaming at them that they're privileged if they don't feel it is counterproductive. It's going to make things worse. And when we look at things like male violence, like the idea of shouting at men for male violence is just, it couldn't be more useless. Male violence is as much of a problem for men as it is for women, notwithstanding sexual violence, obviously.
Yes.
But male violence is a problem for everyone. unless you are a complete evolution denier, you know that young men are the most violent, mammals, the most violent
Mm-mm.
sapiens, and society is all about trying to work out what to do with that. You can teach them not to be, you can punish them if they are violent, you can try and rehabilitate them if they've gone wrong, you can give them games that they can play to get rid of that feeling, you can send them to war like we have traditionally, make them learn how to use a sword or a gun or a bomb. But you shout at them and tell them that they're bad people, and it'll make things worse, especially because the greatest correlate, I always get that word wrong, the greatest correlate, as far as I know, between male violence and between men and violence is mental health. So yeah, you got to worry about any disenfranchised group and extend your empathy to all of them, and not let things like color and gender get in the way of going, okay, so if I was that guy, what would I need to be a better guy? What would I need? Okay, I'm that dude. What do I need? What would convince me? And I tell you what, have you ever been convinced by someone screaming at you on the internet? Have you ever had your mind changed one iota by someone abusing you on the
No,
internet?
absolutely
And
not.
why do we think men will have their minds changed? Like
Yeah.
blokey,
Yeah.
aggressive, mentally unwell, maybe men with our horrible dads.
Yeah.
Do you think shouting on the internet's going to change them?
Well, you've decided you don't want to be shouted at on the internet anymore. How's social media detox going for you? Well, it's not detox, it's you've broken up with social
Well,
media.
I've-
You said it's you, not me, to social
Yeah,
media.
that's right. It's you, not me. I've decided that that it's not good for my mental health. It's not good for my parenting. I was very addicted to it. I actually hate my phone. It's an awful thing. And I'm 8 years older than you, so I got my childhood. I got my adolescence
Yeah.
without it. Unfortunately, I think it does more harm than good, even though it does a huge amount of good. I think as a communication tool, it's great. But the particular algorithms, the particular types of social media that we've ended up falling in love with, is that we fell in love with them because they did it deliberately to us. They addicted us. They're terrible for our concentration. They're terrible for our discourse. They're terrible for our mental health. They're terrible for our mental health because we see other people having perfect lives and think our lives are shit, but we also see other people distressed and think that distress should be ours, that we have a moral obligation to take on board the distress of other people, which
Sometimes we do, though.
is very human. Well, I'd love that chat.
Like, we're going to have that.
Yeah, I'd love that chat. It's probably fundamentally okay. We'll get to that chat, but so it was sort of hard. But all I did is deleted the apps, and I don't know my passwords. I can go online and have a look on the internet browser, but I find I don't. I might have a 10-minute look at the end of every second day,
Okay.
but just on some of those old Facebook groups where there's a bunch of intellectuals discussing things, because I like to make sure I'm not completely. It's really hard socially. I just don't know what all my friends are doing anymore,
Yeah.
and they tend not to reach out through text. All my like fun blue tick friends on Insta that I used to like
Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
to, like, oh, so you're doing a movie with Ryan Gosling, like that's all gone.
Yeah.
But that's better for me too.
Do you miss out on like cultural moments or even news? Because most people get their news from
Yeah.
social media, or you're still a newspaper and television guy.
Okay, so I don't want to overstate this, but I'll be deliberately provocative.
Ooh.
I don't think it's a moral good to know about the suffering of everyone in the world
Oh.
beyond what you're going to be able to act on and affect positively. So let me give you an example, right?
This is like taking ignorance is bliss to
Yeah,
a
it's
whole
ignorance.
nother
Well, it's
level.
not a whole nother level. It's just the original level. It's just the base level.
Well, no, because ignorance is bliss used to be because you weren't able to know. You were ignorant because of your lack of education or lack of
You're
access.
a farmer. All you know is your horse and your
Yes,
wife and the
but
sun and the
now
the
ignorance
platypus in
is
the creek.
bliss. You're saying it can be a choice and should be a choice.
Yeah, so you need to curate your circle of concern. So earlier, this that question mark does one. Sorry, that sounded like a sort of. But my working theory is one needs to curate one's circle of concern. The thing is, we do it involuntarily. So you are much more agitated by one terrible disaster that's happening in the world than you are by another terrible disaster. Not that's, by the way, that's whataboutism in a good way. One should always ask oneself, why am I agitated by this but not that? And it's usually because we are more agitated by suffering of people who look like us and feel like us and share cultural, which is totally as it should be. So earlier I said we need to expand.
I don't know if it's as it should be, but it's as it is
Well,
because
it's
we're
as
tribal.
it is,
Yeah.
because we're tribal, and
Yeah.
I always, it's a horrible reference, but the stress caused by the loss of Madeleine McCann. Do you remember Madeleine McCann? Compared to the loss of, I think there was an earthquake in Iran during that time where 5,000 kids were killed the same week or whatever. That's also, there's lots of psychology going on there, individuals versus groups, and the way people grieve we don't relate to, all that stuff. But so I said we should expand our empathy as much as we can, and I really believe that. I especially believe that's potent when it comes to our community, right? So our job is to keep our community good, primarily. Your family, you understand that when I talk about your family, right? You're obviously going to care more about your kids and your partner, and then you'll care about your friends and your cousins. This is all fine. And then you'll care about, we should care about New South Wales, the mental health and the environmental health and the cultural health and the political health of New South Wales, and then we should care about Australia. And then we should care about the world and all that. And we should extend it as far as we possibly can, especially when it comes to individuals. When someone pisses you off, you should go, what would it feel like to be them? Or if someone disagrees with you and you want to change their mind, your first thing has to be, what would it feel like to be them? How would I want my mind changed or my ideas challenged? But then there's this other thing where all the world's grief is coming through this little thing that we can't even put away from our beds, for God's sake. We're lying in bed and we're reading the distress of someone here and someone there, and someone who's got a very, very strong opinion on something that feels correct to us, but we don't know if they're right or not. If you are taking in all the distress, and the news, by the way, is not the world. The news is literally an algorithm and a bunch of people trying to get you agitated by the thing that agitates you most. You're not getting a perfect cross-section of the world's news. You're getting the thing that makes you angriest or laugh because it's a funny dog.
Yeah.
And we're getting fed it all day, every day, and the people making the news are motivated to find the edgiest stuff all the time. So you're not getting the news, you're getting fed a agitating story. And that makes you a worse mother and a worse partner and a worse friend and a worse member of your Sydney community and a worse member of your New South Wales community, arguably. And if all the other news that distresses me, the 24-hour news, the blah, blah, if that distresses me so I'm less effective and less kind and less able to smile in the morning and help my kid who has their own problems and blah, blah, surely it's an ethical evil to let your capacity to help in the ways that you've decided you can help be damaged by being distressed all the time by everyone's pain, because you can't possibly shoulder everyone's pain.
No, I understand that, but the world you're painting is one in which somebody's taking away from distressing images because it paralyzes them and makes them unable to be effective advocates, and instead channeling it into a myriad of ways, from soup kitchens to scholarships. That sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
What I worry about is that just ending with, well, look away because it's too hard. Now I'm just going to binge on Netflix series and do fuck all.
I agree, but exactly. So that's the problem. So what if I gave you data that proved that the people who are most effective in their communities and kind of read less news and were less on social media than...
Do you have that? Is that...
No, but what if I did?
I mean, that would be wonderful.
No,
well, you've got a doctorate now, so how about you've got to do something.
Got 3.
Well, you've got to do something with those
fake.
3. I know they're fake, but maybe do that research, because if that is...
Well, I bet we could find it. Let's find it. Let's find whether, here's a more edgy question.
Oh, I do have a bit of research, actually.
Yes,
there was a Harvard study which took people off social media for 6 weeks. It took one group maintained their social media and news consumption online. The other didn't. After 6 weeks, they came back. They found that those who didn't engage, yes, they were less informed. They missed out on a few key moments, but they were happier and reported better relationships. Those who continued their consumption had poorer mental health. Yes, they were informed, but were more polarized. We don't have and then what did the people who weren't online, what did they do with that spare time other than be a bit happier and have better relationships? We don't know what they did in terms of contribution to society and other.
Yeah.
But that's a snippet. I guess that's a window into what you're suggesting.
So it would be hard data to not. It's hard to get your correlations and causations out of the mess of data we have about online stuff. I think the main, people keep trying to point to why the mental health crisis seems so correlated with the introduction of smartphones and social media. And they go, it's because people are jealous, or that it's because girls are mean online, or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's just our brains are completely overwhelmed by dopamine, and then whatever the bad ones are,
Trauma.
distress. I just think it's making us less happy, and I think if we're less happy in this country, don't you think it's so important that Australia doesn't become extreme like America has?
No,
Isn't that just so important? Aren't we amazing compared to America in terms of?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We're amazing, right?
Yeah, especially when much of Europe
Right.
went to the right,
I
or it's going to the
know.
right now, and then it looks like the US will go back to Trump, that Australia managed to, despite lockdowns and all of that fracture,
Vote
maintain.
for a left-wing, a centre-left government.
Yes.
If they were too far left, we wouldn't have.
Yes.
We have to acknowledge that. Then we progressives who really, really, really wanted the voice to go through.
Yeah.
We've drifted into a slightly different topic.
No, but I also feel that we didn't really have time to process and unpack
right.
that, because then October 7 happened.
And it got those two things got conflated in a really poisonous, horrible way.
And I think probably what you're referring to, and certainly what's been traumatizing for me and a lot of other people, is the ongoing atrocities in Gaza, the day in, day out. Like, we are not, and I'm with you here, we are not meant to see live stream genocide. We are not meant to see that many people dead and maimed.
No.
I have seen that many dead children that I wake up at night with those images in my head.
So why do you look? I know the answer-ish, but
I have tried to look away as much as I can, because it's important to be informed, yes, but I'm not sure going from seeing 1,000 children without limbs to seeing 2,000 is going to change my level of being informed. Like, I'm informed, I get what's going on. I find now that people send me stuff all of the time, even when I don't want to look.
Yeah.
And so even though I've tried to take, and obviously as a journalist, it's hard to, and as somebody with who does various things online, it's hard for me to step away because it's part of my job.
And I know I'll get in trouble, and I'm not being glib, but there are as many children dying in the rest of the world, not in such a dense thing. It's a terrible, terrible war. And I know I know I'll get in trouble for not using the right word, but you're not looking at all the death in the world. You're not going looking for videos of some of the sort of warlord stuff in Africa.
People have said that to me before.
And
What's
it's not whataboutism. It's just that you're not, and it's good that you're not.
No, but what the difference is, people are like, what about the people in Sudan?
Yeah.
What about the Uyghurs? What about this? And in part, it's a whataboutism. The difference is...
What about is often a good question. Just because it's got a word from the internet doesn't mean it's not a good question.
Fair enough. My response to that is, they aren't Australia's ally. We don't call them good friends. We don't support them militarily, financially. I agree.
I'm not sure that. I don't know if that's right. I don't know if that's why.
Well, I think...
I don't not believe you. I just ask you to have another look at that. Like,
And
I think it is that. Yeah,
we've
I think
never
it is
two
that.
things. We've never seen it. There have been atrocities, and I don't want to use whether it's war, conflict. People don't like the word war because the power structure is so lopsided. Whatever.
Obviously, the other one people bring up is Syria, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And you weren't as engaged in that because we didn't have access, and because it's not a Western power.
Yes, in part because it's the social media live streaming, so we've never before seen.
It just feels like you shouldn't watch it. I know I'm going to get in trouble for saying that.
No, don't. No, a lot. I've spoken on this very programmed a PTSD expert who says the same thing. That you shouldn't, because our brains are not actually wired to consume so much traumatic. It actually does nobody good. But so the difference is there've not been that many children and journalists killed in such a concentrated time. We've never seen it on our live streamed on our phones, and Australia hasn't had a role to play or can have a role to play in stopping and minimising it and failing to do so. So I think those three make it different to what is happening in other parts of the world.
Well, I don't know. I don't think. I was just going to say, are you helping? And if you're not helping, what are you doing? What are you doing bathing in those images? Why are you doing it to yourself if you're not going to do something about it? And does every new child you see mutilated increase or decrease your capacity, or neutral your capacity to help?
I agree with you that it was paralysing for a moment, so
Yeah.
I've stopped looking where possible. Sometimes things just appear or people send you don't realise in a WhatsApp group, and you're just like, oh, that's not what
I
I...
had an Uber driver show me a beheading.
Yeah.
I would never ever look at that
Yes,
stuff.
that's what
He's like, look at this. This
Yeah.
is happening in my country. This is a different war at a different time. And
But
I
yes,
was
so
like,
sometimes
"Dude, I'm
involuntarily
cooked."
consuming things. So yes, I have, because it was beginning to affect my ability to function, let alone do something. Am I doing things? Yes. I'm
Yes.
doing within my capacity.
I
am
know
doing
you are.
as much as
Well,
I
and
can.
I understand.
But there is also, I'll be honest, the additional element which saddens me is seeing the dehumanization, if you are an Arab or a Muslim, the acceptance of a pile of bodies which would completely not be acceptable if they were white bodies, or
There's that many white bodies in the Ukraine and in Russia. I mean, there's Russian boys,
but
there's
then
Russian soldiers. I mean, they're just kids sent to the front. It's terrible.
it is. But we've taken in Ukrainian refugees. We've barely taken anybody in from Gaza. So just seeing the different treatment and the different regard for life based on whose it is, for me, brings...
The thing I'm not talking about is there is a distinction between Ukraine and Russia, and
one's an ally, one's a, depends on which side of the...
that's right.
Yeah.
Like Israel is a sort of Western style democracy in the Middle East, and we're not going to have a conversation about whether it should have ever been there, but it is there. And so a Western democracy in the Middle East is a natural ally to us, given that it's surrounded by countries that are theocratic dictators who want it destroyed. It's not a natural fit for Australia. Australia was never going to go, oh, Hamas, they're our allies. Like, Hamas are, terrible cats.
Yeah.
And
But so is the IDF, and I'd argue that Israel operates as an ethnocracy because only Jewish people have rights and live freely, unlike
for the 2 million Arab Muslims who
But
also want Israel to win this war.
in greater Israel, because they occupy Gaza and the West Bank. People don't have freedom of movement. People aren't allowed to
No.
come and leave. People who are Palestinian from abroad,
Well,
Australia can't
yeah.
return. So it operates as an ethnocracy with certain rights and Western values for some, and absolute abhorrent treatment for others.
I can't. It's
Can
just
you can you acknowledge though that
Australia's response is, I think the average Australian would feel, to get it back to the sort of broader philosophical topic, would feel less empathy for people that don't look or act like them, including Hasidic Jews, or who are taking over the West Bank. But I think the some of the horrors of October 7, when you're sort of pretty girl at a music festival, would land harder for some than this sort of rubble and brown skin and stuff, without a doubt.
yeah, absolutely.
And it's pretty, the human, it's really called homophilia. Humans like same, and humans are attracted to same, and not just how they look, but how we speak and what we eat and how we smell and how we wear our hair.
And I think maybe that was probably more obvious in the early stages as everyone was reeling from the horrors of October 7. I think as things have progressed, what I have witnessed, I'm not a protest goer or, at the encampments, you're seeing a growing Jewish community, white progressives, older Australians, people who don't have skin in the game per se, coming along and being like, oh man, like...
The longer this war goes, the more people just want the war to end.
Yeah, and they're like, this suffering is not okay.
Yeah. I find it unbearable, Someone said to me, "Don't you care?" And I was like, "What's the thought experiment?" Like,
well, you've been on the blockout list. You're on the blockout list.
What does that mean?
Oh God, you're not on social media, so you don't know. So there are. It more started in the United States around the Super Bowl and the Met Gala, going all these people with big profiles who've done nothing or who've historically taken stances on feminism or whatnot, Black Lives Matter, have said absolutely nothing about what's happening to Palestinians daily. And so there was a list, block out, and then
Mm.
they would go, oh, Beyonce hasn't said anything, or or whatever it
Isn't that
is.
disgusting behaviour?
And then you
Isn't
would
that
go
just
and block.
narcissistic, gross, self-aggrandizing?
What for
Like going, oh, I'm going to like.
block Beyonce?
Well, I think, because of how I read the world, that person I don't know not saying something that I believe, there's something wrong with that person. Like, you can't have a world like that. We have to be able to tolerate the greatest difference that we possibly can tolerate. We have to be able to tolerate people who think gay people shouldn't be allowed to get married. And when I say tolerate, I mean try and convince them, but we can't scream at them and try and shame them, and you just can't have a society like that.
Well, that's
So
the blockout list does that. It started in the US and now
yeah,
it's going through, Australian
yeah,
comedians or Australian
yeah.
artists who've said nothing about.
So that'll be run by 22-year-olds who are just children, right? That's just childish behavior. That is like being 14 at school and going, Cindy doesn't like Taylor Swift, we're not talking to her anymore.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to diminish it like that.
No,
but it
it's
simply is. Because here's something I know. You, unbelievably intelligent, articulate, passionate,
excellent teeth.
wonderful toothed Antoinette Lattouf. You, without hearing a single word you said, I could pick where your feelings would be about Palestine and Israel. And my beautiful friend, call him Jeremy Cohen, liberal, caring, anti-Netanyahu loving thing, they're going to be over here. It's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that the 15 million Jews in the world feel different from the 1.8 billion Muslims about this. It is.
But it's not just.
And so you can't. It is childish to say Beyonce is required to have my opinion on this when I can show you that the only reason you have the opinion you have is because of your cultural inputs.
No, but that's not true, because every human rights organization, including B'Tselem in Israel, all pretty much, whether it's Amnesty, UNICEF, Doctors Without Borders, B'Tselem, they are all.
Sorry, I'm not saying they wouldn't.
They all have
wouldn't
the
condemn
same.
the war. Yeah,
they all have the same views that.
Yeah.
The war crimes that are happening, the persecution of journalists, the killing of civilians, the maiming and disabling of civilians, the ongoing occupation, the lack of liberty, movement and dignity for Palestinians, that nobody is safe and free until everybody is safe and free. So this is not a 1.8 billion Muslims versus however many Jewish people.
No, just Jewish people have a different set of ideas than you.
Human right. But
do you understand that to be true?
I do understand that to be true, but I also understand that any views or facts that I have echo every human rights organization in the world, and they aren't doing it because of a Muslim Jew thing. They're doing it because of human rights and international law. So I think it's too reductive to reduce it to religion, because it's beyond religion.
No,
it's the treatment of humans.
I'm not reducing to religion at all. I'm just saying your cultural inputs are why you are you, and their cultural inputs are why they are them, and my cultural. It's just that policing other people's opinions on the internet is just the most counterproductive and silly thing to do, because you're not acknowledging that person has a different set of information than you. So there's a reason
they might have
why,
a different set of opinions.
There's a reason why they haven't spoken. That's all I'm saying, is they have their reasons why they've decided not to speak.
Well, they're probably fearing sort of backlash and persecution, because anybody who has in arts or media, like I've experienced, the punishment is swift.
So what we have to work out is how we sit with the fact that there are good people, I'm almost quoting Donald Trump, there are good people who believe really different things from you about lots of stuff. And when I say good people, I mean, like, I know lots of lefty friends who believe all the right things, but they're assholes,
Yeah.
And I know lots of conservative people who are really kind, but they've just got different beliefs and they're quite religious or whatever. We just have to work out how to make sure that all this news coming in, all our anxiety, all our passion, all our social media feeds, our personal responsibility is to try and figure out whether the way we are acting in the world is increasing or decreasing conflict. And I think we can mostly do better, including myself.
No, I think we all can.
In terms of thinking about how other people... that other people come from different places from us, and it's sometimes really, really hard because you feel really, really angry that people don't see what you see.
We've covered so much, but we didn't
and yet so little.
we haven't talked about your first nonfiction book, You Don't Have to Have a Dream. And that's some advice for the incrementally ambitious. You provide 9 life lessons in it. I'm going to
Yeah.
rattle through a couple that jumped out at me. Don't seek happiness.
Yeah.
What else? What else are we seeking if it's not happiness?
You should, as it says, you should think about creating happiness for others, and you'll get some of the side effect.
Oh, I love that.
It's more don't let that be the thing you're pursuing. If you have a meaningful, if you're making a meaningful contribution to your community, you'll feel happy.
And I guess this is something we've spent a bit of time unpacking. Be hard on your opinions, because we must think critically and not just about the ideas of others. Be hard on our beliefs, your own beliefs. I think that's probably a slowly dying art.
Yeah. So the idea is to treat, in philosophy you talk about the principle of charity, right? Which is basically argue unto others as you would have argue unto you. So when someone has an opinion that's not yours, firstly, try and see the best version of it, the most generous version of it. And secondly, be as hard on what you think as you want to be as hard on what you think as you want to be on them, and as nice on what they think as you want them to be on you. And I mean, it's a total fantasy land, right? It's not how humans work, but I reckon we should try. I reckon we should try more.
I do. I reckon so too. But you have said advice for the incrementally ambitious. I reckon that's the ambitious.
Yes, that's very ambitious.
That part is, and that really, brings us full circle, because the polarization, social media consumption, the identity politics, the cancel culture, that is all when people are not hard on their own opinions, really.
And see the other as the other. See other people who don't agree with them, not just as people who have a different set of information, but as the other tribe. And it's really hard not to do. And I feel it and have to constantly suppress it.
Who do you think your book's for? Other than everybody, because it's going to be a bestseller.
I've got to talk about this book. It's got 3 of my university speeches in it. I've given 3 speeches for 3 fake degrees, 3 honorary doctorates.
I just love that. But they're like, you got like the Cliff's Notes version of doctorates, because you didn't actually have to do the work, and that's how I want to do it.
Luckily, they're meaningless, so I'm not competing for any doctor's employment opportunities.
Yeah, you're not providing heart transplants.
No, I don't put it in my instant bio, but
I'd be doctoring that all the time.
I know, right? It's tempting. I wrote 3 speeches, and then this year I wrote 3 essays to accompany those speeches. And one speech is a sort of life lessons one, the one you were referring to, which went viral and has been watched by hundreds of millions of people. And the other 2 are less viral, but one's really about they're really about creativity and how to put good ideas into the world.
Yeah.
And I hope in talking to you, you feel from me that what I want is to put good ideas into the world. I want that really, really badly.
Yep.
And I think me cutting myself off from some of the 24-hour input of agitation algorithms is part of me trying to give myself a space where I can put big, beautiful, open-armed, huggy, loving ideas into the world in my art, but also in my book, and also when I'm talking on podcasts.
I love that. I love your big open arms. I'm coming in for a hug.
Big hairy ginger arms.
I'm coming in.
So I'm so sorry that went so long.
Oh my God, but we didn't even realise it. That is it for this episode of The Weekend Briefing. It's a place where we have the opportunity to get to know the interesting and influential people behind the headlines. We want to hear from you. Make sure you leave a comment below, like and subscribe. Catch you next week.